After watching The Substance, you might find yourself wondering, what did I just witness? Was it an artful take on body horror, a satire on Hollywood's obsession with beauty, or a dark introspective drama about self-acceptance? I think it's safe to say it was all of the above. In this video, I want to explore what made The Substance such a hit and why this body horror became a feminist message, and why it received 5 Oscar nominations.
Have you ever dreamt of a better version of yourself?
So The Substance is a new psychological sci-fi thriller that explores some really bold themes around identity, self-image, and self-acceptance, and society's obsession with youth and perfection. Demi Moore delivers a sharp, satirical performance as Elizabeth Sparkle, a character that feels both like a brilliant parody of Moore herself and an embodiment of Hollywood's unforgiving nature. The story is about Elizabeth, who once captivated audiences on the big screen but has been relegated to hosting a morning aerobics show. Even this gig, though, is fleeting. Dennis Quaid makes a memorable impression as her crass, misogynistic producer, Weinstein, who blindly fires her to make room for younger talent. In a desperate attempt to reclaim her youth and relevancy, Liz turns to a dubious experimental treatment offered by a shady pharmaceutical company. The treatment is marketed as a transformative drug designed to extract the best version of oneself. In a grotesque scene, Liz's body convulses and collapses lifelessly on the cold bathroom tiles. Her skin splits open along the spine, and from the visceral cocoon emerges a new version of herself, Sue, a young, flawless figure played by Margaret Qualley. This reborn version of Liz exudes the physical perfection demanded by Hollywood, a perfect candidate for the role Liz just lost. Sue, with her revitalized appearance and magnetic energy, effortlessly lends the role in a new and improved aerobics show, stepping into Liz's world as the embodiment of an enhanced self, or rather, as Hollywood might see it, an upgraded model of womanhood. But there's a catch. Every 7 days, the younger self must alternate with the older one to recharge the matrix. Going beyond the time limit is absolutely forbidden. The younger version can only draw a set amount of energy from the older self. Taking more will cause irreversible damage. But like all Faustian deals, and by the inevitable laws of drama, those rules will be broken. So as Sue begins testing the boundaries of the substance's rules, Elizabeth ages at an alarming rate, embodying the phrase, her own worst enemy. As Sue pushes the boundaries of their coexistence, taking more energy from Elizabeth than she's supposed to, things go completely off the rails. Both of their bodies start falling apart, and what was once a sleek and perfect transformation turns into a horrifying mess. Eventually, Elizabeth and Sue become one grotesque, fused being, a monstrous symbol of how chasing unattainable ideas can destroy you.
One single injection unlocks your DNA and will release another version of yourself.
Body horror's rise in popularity, particularly with the female protagonists, reflects a convergence of cultural, social, and artistic factors that resonate strongly with lots of people. This trend taps into fears and anxieties surrounding bodily autonomy, identity, and transformation, which are particularly poignant when viewed through a feminist or gender-focused lens. The past decade has seen intense global debates around issues like reproductive rights, gender identity, societal expectations of beauty, and autonomy over one's body. Female-centered body horror often allegorizes these struggles. I think The Substance really nails the clarity of the statement about the standards of the female beauty, about not accepting oneself, about the impossibility of controlling aging. And yes, we've already seen a bit of all of this. That's some kind of mix of Cronenberg's Fly, reference Neon Demon, a bit of Brian Usna, in particular his film Society. Although Farja said in an interview with Letterboxd that she hadn't actually watched Usna's work and wasn't inspired by it. There's a lot on Substance that has been done before, but that's not a bad thing. I mean, culture in general kind of rethinks itself, and at a new level uses familiar and well-tested methods to tell a relevant story. And here, it definitely fits into the post-meta cinema. And this is a really cool and witty idea with the two versions of oneself, the young and the old. I haven't seen this concept realized so clearly. And I think it's great that this idea came from the personal experience of the director. Coralie Farja, who's over 40, began noticing the aging of her own body and her struggles with not liking herself and how she was becoming distant from her younger self. And I found proof. While doing the research for this video, I have discovered a miniature version of The Substance that Coralie Farja put out 10 years ago. It's a short film called Reality Plus, and you can find it on Mubi or on YouTube. I'll leave the link in the description. I really recommend finding it and watching it. Here's the premise. In a not so distant future, people have Reality Plus chip implanted at the back of their head. With this chip, a person can choose their outward appearance, the way they will be seen by others, and the way they will see themselves. The main character, a man, not a woman in this case, implants this chip and chooses a model-like appearance. This insanely attractive guy appears, just like from a magazine cover, and then he goes to meet girls. All the elements of The Substance, everything we'll see in 10 years is already there. Scenes in front of the mirrors, posters, screens on the streets, the magical pill that gives you the best version of yourself, the image of the spine split open and sewn back together, that's all there. The torturous period of deactivation is really well depicted, so the idea was already in place. Reality Plus lasts only half the day, and for the rest of the time the protagonist has to stay in his ordinary body, and naturally that becomes torture for him. So what does all this mean? The Substance is not an attempt to jump on some trend. It's the result of many years of reflections on the same topic that clearly is deeply personal. The Substance emerges from Farja's own experience of a midlife crisis when she turned 40, and she became acutely aware of how society often sidelines women past a certain age. And in general, Reality Plus confirms that this is a universal pain for everyone. In Substance, there is also a man. He is the one who gives Elizabeth contacts for the Substance supplier. What distinguishes the short film and what I found most curious is that there is no rage in it at all. It's an absolute happy ending. But in Substance, there is a raging fury because this is a film about women, and the standards for female appearance are still much stricter than those for men. And Farja certainly knows this from her own experience. And that's why Substance is superior, because it's simply more charged.
Control yourself!
The Substance has sparked controversy due to its portrayal of the female body, particularly with regards to objectification. While some critics appreciate the film's bold commentary on beauty standards and aging, using body horror as a metaphor for society's obsession with youth, others argue that it unintentionally reinforces the objectification it seeks to critique. The opening shot of the egg alludes to an age-old question, reimagined to suit the film's theme. Which came first, the desire to please the male gaze, or the gaze itself, warping women to fit its demands? Farja responds decisively, ironically equipped not only with the miracle drug, but also with the full arsenal of masculine objectification tropes. In the critique of societal demands on the female body, Coralie Farja uses the same techniques and approaches that male authors, often objectifying women, have employed. The way she zooms in on Sue's body, the unflinching close-ups of Elizabeth's body, how is this different from the classical male gaze we've seen in cinema? Well, it's not different. The genre invented it all. I think the idea is to turn this gaze to the extreme, to take it to the grotesque. Those lips and those buttocks are shown so many times and so often that they stop being pleasurable to look at. At a certain point it becomes uncomfortable, and the goal is not for the audience to feel pleasure, but for them to feel uneasy, uncomfortable. The body gets bigger and bigger, and in this sense, the third act, with the emergence of the monster that is entirely body, is completely logical. You wanted to examine the body? You wanted breasts on the face? Well, here you go. Examine them. Suffocate. For me, this is an attempt to fight the opponent with their own weapon. In The Substance, the male gaze is exaggerated to an almost grotesque level, underscoring the film's critique of objectification. The shareholders, led by Dennis Quaid's character, are depicted as predatory and lustful, turning their obsessive focus on Sue's body into something uncomfortable and unsettling. Their exaggerated behavior, like Harvey's oily grin and the stares of the other men, turns their gaze into a form of horror, pushing the viewer to confront the ugliness of such objectification. As the film progresses, it increasingly adopts the perspective of these men, showing how their demands for youthful beauty becomes increasingly absurd and oppressive. The film uses the shift to highlight how these beauty standards are not just unrealistic, but deeply damaging. By exaggerating the men's fixation, The Substance critiques the male gaze, revealing how it distorts beauty and reinforces harmful, irrational expectations in society. Does this destroy objectification? In my personal opinion, yes, undoubtedly. But for some, it might, on the contrary, reinforce and strengthen them. I can understand that viewpoint. And in general, of course, cinema still lacks another kind of gaze. The female gaze is still evolving while the male gaze continues to dominate. Even a film like Substance, which is bursting with anger and rage, is still forced to use old techniques instead of new ones, because new ones need to be developed. And this is yet another lesson. Even when a film is deeply critical of societal issues like objectification, it can still rely on the very mechanism it's trying to critique. As filmmakers continue to explore new visual languages, the challenge will be to create narratives that deconstruct these old paradigms rather than recycle them in different forms. Speaking about the visual language, one of the most important aspects of this film is cinematography and how it is amplified by the sound design. Farjah's visual storytelling is both minimalist and richly symbolic. The film opens with a haunting image of a cracked egg injected with green liquid, birthing a new egg. This serves as a metaphor for Elizabeth's transformation, a process that promises perfection but ultimately fractures her. This quirky, almost sci-fi premise is delivered in just a few seconds and without a single word. Then we shift to the next scene, which lingers a bit longer. A Hollywood star seen from above, located on the famous Walk of Fame Boulevard. It's a quick glimpse into the entire life story condensed into minutes. We see the star being laid into the sidewalk, watch a photoshoot marking the actress's peak fame, and gradually sense the name fading into obscurity as fewer people stop to look. Star cracks blending into the sidewalk, but the name remains: Elizabeth Sparkle. This decaying star becomes a powerful metaphor for the harsh realities of celebrity and hints at why Elizabeth turns to the substance, a shady product that promises to unlock a better version of herself. The filmmakers aim not only to tell a story, but to let the viewer feel the experience. That's why there's so many shots filmed from a subjective point of view. These are often stressful situations, but even in calmer scenes, we frequently see objects from characters' perspective. Moreover, on an auditory level, we often hear everything as they hear. In these moments, we quite literally find ourselves in the characters' bodies, merging with them, making all the changes they're experiencing feel so much more painful than if we were watching from a distance. The same can be said for the hallucinatory ending in certain scenes, which conveys the chaotic state of the protagonist's mind. The film's discomforting atmosphere is heightened by detailed close-ups and expressionistic sound design, where everyday sounds are artificially amplified. Another elegant way of conveying the abnormality of what's happening is through wide-angle lenses that distorts the shape of objects. This approach works effectively in both wide and close-up shots. The conflict between the genuine and the artificial is one of the film's central themes. The entertainment industry in Substance is geared towards masking reality and hiding anything unappealing. That's why the film's climax takes place at a New Year's show, where the monstrous Eliza Sue, who wants to be Cinderella at the royal ball, ruins the festive evening for those trying to escape reality. The locations also carry symbolic weight. The studio's long Lynchian corridors pull Elizabeth and Sue deeper into their story, while the minimalist mid-century apartment features a Dorian Gray-like portrait of Elizabeth, highlighting her aging, contrast to the billboard outside, which showcases a youthful Sue. The bathroom where Elizabeth's transformation takes place is especially significant to Farjah. It's a wide, sterile, neon-lit space that functions as a kind of passageway between two worlds, between Elizabeth's old self and Sue's new, younger persona. Farjah describes it as a white cocoon, emphasizing its role as both a place of self-judgment and a symbolic birth, where Elizabeth confronts her reflections and gives rise to a new version of herself. This is also connected to the theme of suppression and the exiling of the older or unappealing version of oneself. The room that Sue builds appears to be a sort of subconscious storage where she hides her more unsatisfactory self. This element, where she not only creates a hidden place for herself, but also tries to push away the more ideal version of herself she has created, highlights her inner conflict. She cannot accept her real self, yet she also cannot accept the idealized version that she herself has created. The dark corridors and the secret rooms become symbols not only of what we try to hide from the outside world, but also of what we are unwilling to accept within ourselves. No matter how hard we try to push away old or new versions of ourselves, they continue to exist, casting their shadow in our consciousness.
People always ask for something new. It's inevitable. At 50, well, it stops.
Corley Farjah uses Elizabeth's accelerated aging as an allegory for societal cruelty towards women past their prime. The aging process is portrayed not as a natural journey, but as a violent stripping away of identity. Elizabeth's decaying body, vividly brought to life through grueling makeup effects, becomes a mirror for her own insecurity. The film challenges the viewers to question, why does society equate youth to worth? In Hollywood and beyond, women are often reduced to their appearances, their value diminishing as wrinkles emerge. As Elizabeth ages, she doesn't just lose roles or relevance, she loses herself. The haunting imagery of her cracked Walk of Fame star symbolizes this descent, her legacy fading as society's spotlight shifts to the next big thing. The emergence of Sue from Elizabeth's bleeding body is kind of a birth, symbolized by recurrent images of egg yolks. Farja explains that the egg is organic, tangible and fluid, representing the perfect shape that will give birth to something new. Given that Margaret Qualley, who plays Sue, could be seen as Moore's daughter, the theme of motherhood is inevitably present. Farja sees a parallel between birth and the fear of aging. The film speaks to the desire to avoid death, which is symbolized by the fear of growing old and fading away. In this scene, Sue's emergence helps Elizabeth avoid complete disappearance, keeping a part of herself alive in the world, a form of transmission that isn't about nurturing someone else, but rather about replication, a selfish or narcissistic act, akin to self-division rather than actual birth. Substance effectively uses body horror to critique an industry that devalues natural aging process. The body horror subgenre traditionally explores fears related to disturbing physical transformations, which often serve as metaphors for social or psychological issues. In Substance, however, the fear is not of bodily transformation itself, but of aging, of the inevitable approach of death. Through disturbing images of aging, the film actualizes the heroine's phobia of losing attractiveness and youth. These repulsive scenes evoke discomfort in the viewer, heightening the horror of bodily deformity and immersing the audience in a state of anxious anticipation. As Elizabeth's transformation accelerates, Moores underwent grueling makeup sessions, up to 7 hours a day, to emerge as a horrific, decaying version of herself, an almost unrecognizable figure, toothless and withered. While some may argue that the film reinforces the notion of aging as monstrous, Farja counters that it critiques how women are valued solely for their appearance.
You gotta get ready, it's our big night.
There is always a set image of what you're supposed to be, to count as a woman, she says. To be nice and polite and pretty and smile, of course, always smile. Casting Moore, an iconic beauty, as a woman so repulsed by her own reflection that she can hardly face the outside world, was deliberate. You can be as beautiful as you want, you'll always be hard on yourself. Society's judgment becomes internalized, leading to self-inflicted pain. Elizabeth's accelerated aging, Farja suggests, isn't so much about her own experience as it is about how society views her. For Farja, Elizabeth's physical transformation, while painful, also becomes a sort of newfound power. Free from the pressures to look perfect, Elizabeth gains a liberating defiance, allowing her to be outspoken, unruly, and finally to express her long-suppressing rage.
Sue, Back off!
Through its biting satire, The Substance skewers Hollywood's relentless pursuit of youth. Dennis Quaid's Harvey, a crass Weinstein-like producer, represents the male-dominant industry that objectifies women while demanding their perpetual reinvention. Sue's exaggerated beauty is flaunt with grotesque intensity, her body dissected by the camera in a manner that feels both seductive and horrifying. The result is a scathing critique of how the entertainment industry commodifies women, turning their bodies into spectacles for public consumption. I was reading an interview with the director of photography, and he said that originally the script called for a classic Hollywood blonde. That was also part of the idea, because after all, the film is partly about Hollywood, and they were looking for a blonde. But I think it's so cool that they didn't find one. In the end, Demi Moore signed on, which brought her an Oscar nomination, and now I cannot imagine this film without her. Demi Moore's casting is definitely for a reason, not just because she's an actress who some might say passed the peak of fame and now she's more or less forgotten, but because in her filmography there are several projects that she herself has talked about where she specifically explored the boundary between her physicality and some desires related to her identity. For example, Indecent Proposal, G.I. Jane, or Striptease. These are all films where she actively worked with her body and with other people's perception of it, and with how that conflicts with what she wants as a person. There was also the famous cover where she appeared pregnant and almost naked. And that was also a challenge to societal standards about how the world views a pregnant woman. It's clear that this is an important topic for her too. It's not just that she, an actress with a long history and vast filmography, came and played this role. No, this role is connected to all of her creative baggage and all her creative reflection over the years of her career. That's really cool. And as a viewer, you connect these things yourself. Substance presents the entertainment industry as amalgamation of Hollywood, a world obsessed with beauty and youth. The director intentionally depicts the television industry as generic, emphasizing the impersonal, mass-oriented nature of the industry, which aims to provide people with what they want to see, bright, idealized images. This dehumanizing approach to the body is deepened by the plot itself. The substance consumed by the characters resemble popular weight loss drugs like Ozempic, making the film especially relevant as it addresses modern trends of the pursuing idealized physicality. Against the backdrop of these grotesque scenes, the film's everyday moments, free from fantasy elements, become especially moving. These scenes portray the characters as vulnerable, lonely, and sincerely suffering. This contrast between the repulsive and the ordinary highlights the characters' human depth and enhances the film's emotional impact, reminding the viewer of the value of authenticity and how the quest for eternal perfection can alienate us from ourselves. Another interesting thing about the body in The Substance, and I didn't even realize it when watching it, is that Sue's perfect body is also partly made. Her breasts and buttocks were added for the film. Margaret Qualley said that they were constantly applying things on her and shaping her. And in her interviews, Margaret constantly repeats that her main achievement was that she didn't lose her mind trying to portray this ideal. Because matching it is incredibly difficult. It's a huge psychological burden. And while Demi Moore clearly needed more courage here, in this scene she definitely had more freedom than Margaret Qualley. Demi Moore is simply outstanding. First of all, she's fearless. She just lets them do something incredible with her. She isn't afraid to be unattractive or repulsive in that makeup. She's not afraid, in a sense, to parody the image of herself from the Ghost era when she was at the peak of her form. And that's really cool. When all the focus is on the body rather than the soul, body horror and the spectacle of sports like beauty contests become two sides of the same coin. The result of this overconsumption is inevitable, the birth of a monster. She's my most beautiful creation, Harvey declares before the high-stakes New Year's show that's crucial for everyone involved. Him, her, and the network. The line delivers a brutal truth and hints at where the story is heading. Under the weight of this objectifying gaze, the duo's self-image twists and warps, symbolized by the cracked glass and Elizabeth's living room, where a poster sits behind a fractured pane, mirroring her own shattered self-perception. By the end, the characters' physical selves deteriorate, blending into a grotesque single entity. The Substance is more than a psychological thriller. It's a chilling allegory for the societal pressures that shape and distort our sense of self. Through Elizabeth's transformation and ultimate unraveling, Farjad critiques the destructive pursuit of perfection, urging us to embrace the authenticity we often hide. By blending surreal body horror with sharp satire, the film leaves us with a haunting question. What happened when the idealized self becomes a prison? In confronting this, The Substance challenges us to redefine our relationships with beauty, aging, and identity, and reminds us that self-acceptance is the ultimate act of rebellion. The chaos peaks during a live New Year's show where Sue's transformation is fully exposed to the audience. Her flawless appearance deteriorates in front of everyone, shattering the illusion of perfection that society craves. Meanwhile, Elizabeth's completely drained and broken has to face the truth. No version of herself, young or old, can satisfy the impossible expectations she's been living under. The movie wraps up with a return to the image of Elizabeth Cracked, Walk of Fame star, a haunting reminder of how fleeting fame and beauty really are. In a way, it feels like Elizabeth finds a weird kind of freedom by the end, as if letting go of the constant pressure to be perfect is its own kind of relief. But the ending doesn't give clear answers, leaving you to wonder if true self-acceptance is even possible in a world that's so obsessed with appearance. It's a brutal but fitting conclusion to a story about how striving for perfection can break you apart, inside and out.